final story is going to be an update. We covered this again. An update to something we've been following for quite some time, and it is the utter disaster that the Telegram token offering has become in recent months for investors in the TON project. With the SEC investigation and subsequent court order that froze Telegram's issuance of the Gram token to investors and delaying the launch of their actual network being done, things are looking pretty dire for the project in general. However, in a bid to salvage their TON network, Telegram is now offering investors an interesting deal that will hopefully buy them some time to actually be able to see their project come to fruition, to see the project through. So the last time that we covered the Telegram launch, we explained how beleaguered investors were being offered 72% of their capital back if they wish to walk away now and liquidate their stake in the blockchain project. This is after the TON Gram launch distribution was blocked by the SEC, and it pushed back the actual launch of the network to April 30th, 2020, which is today. Right? Well, it seems that Telegram will fail to meet its revised launch date after failing to come to a resolution with the regulators in time. But out of the blue, Telegram has now extended a new offer to investors today, an option that will lend their invested capital to Telegram for a year in exchange for equity share in the company. So basically, turning out to the investors who gave them the money and saying, hey, listen, we're totally willing to give you your money back, but if you just let us hold on to it for 1 year, you get a stake in our company. This new deal means that if investors were to treat their invested capital in the Telegram Open Network TON project as a loan to the firm, they would be given their entire investment back along with an extra 10% ROI. The returns would allegedly be doled out in April 2021. And one critical detail to note is that the return investment would be in equity shares rather than cash. Now, Gabriel Shapiro, who is an attorney focused on our space, spoke to the writer of this article. And his take was largely positive on this news, right? He explained how it's largely a good outcome for Telegram investors, that they thought that they were buying a token that would be directly integrated into the Telegram app and whose value would likely rise with Telegram's network effect. Now, while that token may not come to pass the way that they thought, the equity shares being offered as substitutes are similar enough to the original concept to potentially satisfy investors who were actually banking on the popularity and continued growth of Telegram in the first place. So they have the option, if they don't think that their investment was well staked and the popularity and continued growth of Telegram, they can walk away, of course. Now, although Telegram did launch this successful $1.7 billion token sale in 2018, it has never been possible to own traditional equity in Telegram. So this proposed equity option, now it might prevent investors from liquidating their stakes immediately, which, if enough agree to it, is going to buy the TON firm enough time to find a long-term solution, or possibly, kind of figure it out with regulators down the road without returning the money it's raised to date. Right. So, if investors take the new deal that's currently on the table, they can be among the first venture investors in Telegram's equity, right? Which is most likely for them, a better investment than the tokens in the first place if Telegram is successful, right? Now, if the investors decide to liquidate their token investment, they can walk away with 72% of their investment, right? The company and investors mutually agreed on this figure when the issuance of tokens was first postponed back in January of 2020. So just following through on what they already agreed with. Now, of course, this means that investors are going to be left to choose one of two options: sell their stake for 72% of what it was worth immediately, or lend it out for another year and receive 10% of their capital in the form of Telegram shares, which is actually, depending on if you're bullish on Telegram moving forward, is a pretty good deal because they've never offered public equity in their company's firm. But in order to materialize that 110% return, investors have to bet that the company will raise a fresh round of investments next year. Like, only then would they have the opportunity to sell their equity holdings, right? This is how funding works, right? The second wave of funding goes to pay back the first wave of funding, and the third, and so on and so on and so forth. And then it's actually company profits after your company's been running for like 5 years that actually go to pay back your last leg of investors, right? So those bullish on the prospects of Telegram are going to take the deal. The rest of the investors are going to be walking away with 72% of their capital in cash. It just depends on who does what and how many does what. It was a little over a month ago that the New York District Court slammed Telegram with an order to halt the disbursement of their tokens in the first place, right? Their token raise was deemed an unregistered security offering by the SEC, and many of those who invested in the project live in the United States, right? A lot of TON investors live in the United States. This was like, no good. You got to make up to them. You got to figure this out. So this latest development means that if Telegram is unable to come to an understanding with US regulators between now and April of 2021, investors are at the very least assured to have their own equity in the 5th largest messaging app in the world. So let me know what you guys think. What would you do if you were in that situation? Would you take the shares? Would you take the money and run, even though it's 72% of what you initially put in? But hey, you know, like 3/4 of a bird in the hand is worth 3/4 of a bird in the bush type thinking.